Dear students, today our topic for discussion is Rowlatt Act. As we know that the Rowlatt Act was officially known as Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act. So the Rowlatt Act refers to Draconian law passed by the British government. It was a legislative act passed by the Imperial Legislative Council in Delhi on 18th of March 1919. This Rowlatt Act, it was based on the recommendations of Sedition Committee. It was based on the recommendation of Sedition Committee. As we know that in 1917, British Viceroy Lord Chelmsford, he appointed a sedition committee under the chairmanship of Sir Sidney Rowlatt. Sir Sidney Rowlatt, he was a British jurist. Sir Sidney Rowlatt was a British jurist. Lord Chelmsford appointed sedition committee under the chairmanship of Sir Sidney Rowlatt. And we see that this sedition committee, it was also known as Rowlatt Committee. And the Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act, it was commonly known as Rowlatt Act because of the chairmanship of Rowlatt Committee, Sir Sidney Rowlatt. It was, we can say that this Rowlatt Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act, it was named after the Rowlatt Committee President. Rowlatt Committee President, Sir Sidney Rowlatt. So this act, it was passed by the British government on 18th of March 1919. The act was described as no vakil, no dalil, and no appeal. No vakil, no lawyer, no dalil, no argument, and no appeal. So the act, Rowlatt Act, it was described as no vakil, no dalil, and no appeal. It was passed by Imperial Legislative Council in Delhi on 18th of March 1990, despite the opposition from the side of Indian members. We see that the Indian members of Imperial Legislative Council में जो भी Indian members थे, उन्होंने protest किया. They were against the passing of the Rowlatt Act. So despite their opposition, the British government passed Rowlatt Act. So in protest, many Indian nationalist leaders like Madan Mohan Malviya, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Mazharul Haq, they resigned. In protest, they resigned from the Imperial Legislative Council. उन्होंने resign किया Imperial Legislative Council से because of the passing of Rowlatt Act. Rowlatt Act जब pass हुआ, so they resigned from the Imperial Legislative Council. And we see that when this sedition committee was appointed, when the Rowlatt Act was passed, at that time the Viceroy of India was Lord Chelmsford. So Lord Chelmsford was Viceroy of India at the time of passing of Rowlatt Act. Lord Chelmsford, 1916 to 1921. So this was the tenure of the Lord Chelmsford. And we see that when this act was, what was the main motive behind the appointment of Sedition Committee or Rowlatt Committee? The main motive behind the appointment of Sedition Committee or Rowlatt Committee was, the idea was to evaluate the political terrorism in India, especially in Bengal and Punjab. To evaluate the political terrorism in India, especially Bengal and Punjab. So the main aim behind the passing of Rowlatt Act was to curb the growing nationalist upsurge in India. To curb the growing upsurge. To curb the growing upsurge, nationalist upsurge in India. So main motive was to weaken the national movement. We see that to curb the nationalist upsurge in India. And we see that this act, it gave the British government autocratic powers to repress political activities. This act gave autocratic powers to government to repress political activities, and we see that it authorized the British government to imprison, or we can say that to detain any person for 2 years without any trial. So one of the this unfortunate feature of this act was that the government has power. This act empowered the government. They can imprison any person. Government ab kisi ko bhi imprison kar sakte the without any trial. There was no need of a trial for 2 years. So government can imprison or detain any person for 2 years without any trial. Without any trial, government can imprison any person. And this act also empowered the police to search for a place without any warrant. So there was no need of a warrant. So government can imprison, they can search any place, they can imprison any person without any warrant for 2 years. They can imprison any person for 2 years without any warrant. And we see that this act, it was the Indians, they started protesting against the act, and they called the act as Black Act because it curtailed the act curtailed the liberty of the people, freedom of speech and expression, liberty of people, freedom of speech and expression, and also it placed severe restrictions. It also placed severe restrictions on the freedom of press. It also placed severe restrictions on freedom of press. And with the Indians, they were outraged by this act as it was clearly undemocratic. जो ये act था, it was clearly undemocratic, oppressive था, and it hurt the national sentiments and dignity of the Indian people. So the government के पास powers, the government had powers to search for a place and arrest any person without any warrant suspected for seditious activities. This act, it took away the people's right to legal discourse, and it suspended the constitutional right. The act suspended the constitutional right of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus means to produce the body. So this habeas corpus, this constitutional right was suspended with the coming of the Rowlatt Act. And we see that this act, it was meant to replace the emergency law. It was passed because it was meant to replace the emergency law called the Defense of Indian Act. Defense of Indian Act of 1915. So this act was meant to replace the emergency law called the Defense of this Indian Act 1915. And we see that this act, the act was described as no vakil. It was described as no vakil, no dalil, and no appeal. The act was described as no vakil, so no lawyer, no dalil means no argument, and no appeal. The act was described as no vakil, no dalil, and no appeal. So we see that after the passing of act, in response to Rowlatt Act, Mahatma Gandhi, he called for Mahatma Gandhi in response to Rowlatt Act, Mahatma Gandhi called for this countrywide campaign. Mahatma Gandhi called for a countrywide campaign against the act on 6th April. So 6th April को क्या हुआ? 6th April को महात्मा गांधी ने against the act, in response to act, he started Rowlatt Satyagraha. महात्मा गांधी ने Rowlatt Satyagraha start किया 6th April को against passing of this act. So dear students, जो ये act था Rowlatt Act, actually officially इसका नाम था Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act, but it is commonly known as Rowlatt Act because सिडनी रॉवलेट जो था, इट वाज दिस एक्ट वाज बेस्ड ऑन द रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ रॉवलेट कमेटी। जो रॉवलेट कमेटी था उसका जो चेयरमैन था, उसका जो प्रेसिडेंट था वो था सर सिडनी रॉवलेट। ब्रिटिश ज्यूरिस्ट था, ब्रिटिश जज था, ब्रिटिश जज सर सिडनी रॉवलेट। सो इसके रिकमेंडेशंस पे एक एक्ट इन्हें पास हुआ, एक लेजिस्लेशन को पास किया इंपीरियल लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल ने दिल्ली में। सो दैट इज व्हाई दिस एनार्चिकल एंड रेवोल्यूशनरी क्राइम्स एक्ट इज नोन एज रॉवलेट एक्ट, बिकॉज दिस रॉवलेट एक्ट, दिस एनार्चिकल एंड रेवोल्यूशनरी क्राइम्स एक्ट वाज बेस्ड ऑन द रिकमेंडेशंस ऑफ रॉवलेट कमेटी। और रॉवलेट कमेटी का जो चेयरमैन था वो था सर सिडनी रॉवलेट, ब्रिटिश जूरिस्ट था, उसी ने रिकमेंडेशन दी। एक्चुअली द मेन एम क्या था इस एक्ट का? द आइडिया वाज टू इवैल्यूएट द पॉलिटिकल टेररिज्म इन इंडिया, स्पेशली इन बंगाल एंड पंजाब। अगर हम बात करेंगे आप 1919 की, उस टाइम हम देखते हैं जो पंजाब और बंगाल था, दे वर द नर्व सेंटर्स ऑफ द इंडियन नेशनलिज्म। सो इंडियन नेशनलिज्म एट इट्स पीक था। सो ब्रिटिश गवर्नमेंट's main aim was how to curb the activities of nationalist activities कैसे खत्म किया जाए, how to curb, how to control, ठीक है ना? And the main aim was how to, they actually the British want to this tighten the grip over the people. So this was the motive behind the passing of the Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act. Actually, it refers to a Draconian law passed by the British government in India. So, वीडियो को देखने के साथ साथ चैनल को सब्सक्राइब